Our starting point for monopolistic competition is that you need to understand the characteristics of the market. With perfect competition, we said many sellers, identical product, price taker, zero barriers to entry. Monopolistic is the one that I like to do next because it's closer to that than oligopoly or monopoly. Some books put it in a different order. I think it's easier to learn it this way. So, what we want to start with, monopolistic. It's a little bit of a hybrid because we have the monopoly element and we have the competitive element at the same time. The name really does fit what's going on with this market type. Like a monopoly, you're going to have some price control. Some price control. Sometimes you might have a great deal of price control, just depends on what the product is and what that particular market is. There are an awful lot of monopolistically competitive markets, so if you're talking about something like blue jeans versus something like bubble gum, you're going to have slightly different or very different characteristics depending on how narrowly you define the industry that you're talking about. But they have some price control. You also have, at least to some degree, product differentiation. Which is a great big way of saying products are different. Or they don't even have to really be different. You just have to be able to convince the consumer that there's some reason that your product is more attractive than somebody else's. It might be brand positioning. It might be your pricing strategy. It might be some goofy magazine ad that you run that doesn't even feature your product, but it has people, you know, lounging on the beach, and it looks good, so people go buy really expensive perfume. Those are techniques that companies use to try to make you aspire to a certain mood or, you know, believe that there's some reason why you should shell out big bucks for something that's pretty much the same as the $10 version down the street at the drugstore. People do it all the time. But product differentiation is a big part of this. You're not going to bother differentiating something like green beans. Okay, they're green beans. They're just, you know, come on. All right, so those are two of the big things that we can say are similar to a monopoly. Now, how is this like a competitive market? Well, first of all, there may be some barriers to entry. Again, just like this, it depends on how narrowly we define the industry or what product we're talking about. But in terms of competitiveness, you tend to have low or no barriers to entry. Still tends to be pretty easy to get into this market. A barrier to entry, for example, would be, let's say you have to have really, really expensive machines, or you have to have a huge plant to get started. That would be a barrier to entry. You don't tend to see this with monopolistically competitive markets. Or if you have, you know, exclusive patents, that might be a barrier to entry. You're not worried about that yet. We'll get to that, but that'll be, you know, more with oligopoly and monopoly. So tend to have low barriers to entry. And also, you don't have absolute price control. You still tend to have lots of firms. Okay, you still tend to have lots of firms. And again, that's another one where we could dispute it in terms of particular markets, but we're looking at this kind of on the whole. And the last thing, and this is going to be really the important thing, with monopolistic competition. With perfect competition, we said in the long run, it's a zero profit market. With monopolistic, it's going to be pretty much the same thing. Long run, zero economic profit. Because with low barriers to entry, it's the kind of thing that's not that difficult to get into. You don't have to invest huge amounts of money to do it. People see you're making all this money, they're going to want to get in on it too. So for the same kinds of reasons. So monopolistic, again, a little bit of a hybrid. You got a little bit of monopoly, you got a little bit of competition. But if you want the key defining characteristic for what makes this market, it's right here. You got to remember that.